a massive thank you to everybody for joining this. There's not a huge number of us here, so is it okay if we just have a few introductions? And because we rarely ever do this because there's always so many people. But if I just quickly go around, people can say hi. I might take like a couple of minutes. So Afzal, if you want to go first.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Afzal Hussain, Chief Officer at Wilton Lodge Community Association.
Brilliant. Thanks, Afzal. And got Gareth.
Hi there, yeah, I'm Gareth Morgan. I'm the Head of Education Engagement for the Wildlife Trust of Birmingham and the Black Country.
Thanks, Gareth. We've got Gary.
Yeah, good morning all. Gary Everett, Inspector from Westminster Police, Lakewood East constituency, so covering the Aston, Newtown, Smallheath, Highgate and Needle areas.
We're so happy that the police want to be part of this, Gary. It just speaks volumes in terms of kind of, where statutory organisations are with this kind of stuff. So it's really great. So thank you for that. Erica.
Hi, morning all. Erica Martin. I work for the Active Wellbeing Society. I'm the Assistant Director for Community Sport.
Thank you. We've got Justine.
Morning. I work for Birmingham Trees for Life, Communications and Community Liaison.
Brilliant. Thanks, Justine. We've got Audrey.
Hi there, I'm Audrey O'Connor. I'm the Heritage and Environment Manager for the Canal and River Trust.
Thank you, Audrey. We've got Sam.
Hi everyone, I'm Sam and I work for Birmingham Children's Trust. I'm working on the pilot of Naturally Birmingham.
Got Andy.
Hi there, so I'm a Principal Officer in the South East Development Plans team at Birmingham City Council, and I have been the planning lead for the Future Parks Accelerator programme over recent months. That's me.
Andy's been quite modest there. He's done a lot more than that. So Andy's our chair for one of our internal BCC groups. So you'll have seen the whole structure of the governance. So that the operations group where the action's going to be happening from a BCC perspective, Andy will chair that. And because of that chair role, I wanted him in this conversation with any alliance conversations because there has to be complete
linkage.
Thank you. So Andy's played a really important role there. And equally, as we get more an idea of who wants to be part of the alliance and as we form it, we'll be inviting the alliance to be part of the group that Andy's chairing as well. So just to kind of help with that. So thank you, Andy. We've got Gavin.
Morning, Gavin Passmore from the Canal and River Trust. I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the region.
Brilliant, thanks Gavin. And then we've got Nick.
Hello everybody, yes, it's Nick Bryson, Green City Manager for City Council.
So just also to say that Nick's the brains behind the Birmingham Fair audit, really, and his kind of, that's what a lot of the alliance will be based upon. So yeah, Nick's your man. Lots for any questions on that. Sorry, Nick, put you on the spot there. And then last but not least, we've got Debbie Needle.
Yes, hi everybody, I'm Debbie Needle. I'm the community facilitator for the project. I'm based with Birmingham Open Spaces Forum, and I'm hopefully going to take you through a presentation that will bring together ongoing thoughts and feedback, see where we are now and how we can look at the action part of it.
Fab. So it's taken a while to get here to the action bit, but thank you for your patience, folks, because I know everybody here is very action focused. Well, because you have to be because of the roles that you have in our system. Just to kind of say a couple of reflections. First, I'm so pleased that so many people have joined this conversation, and it is a conversation. Some people have suggested to us that we've got a done deal. That it's completely been agreed what we're doing and how we're doing it, and it's absolutely not. So Debbie will take you through a presentation. Yes, we've put some thoughts down, we've put some ideas down, because when we've done this previously, going to a group, having a conversation without any thinking on our part hasn't been well received. People have wanted to hear what we think we need to be doing to be able to respond to it. So just because you see that plan, it's not set in stone, and I'm happy to keep repeating that if I need to. And the reason we're bringing it to you today is because you guys are the experts. We're very lucky to have Debbie for a whole host of reasons. to be careful what I say because I'm being recorded, but she's also a part-time therapist for me as well, so keeping me sane in this kind of really massive program. But you know, Debbie's got a huge community brain and is in this world and has been for a long time, so we're very lucky to have kind of her insights on this as well. But you know, the reason we're coming to talk to you is we really want some honest feedback on the kinds of actions that we're thinking of doing as a result of the audit that we've done in Borsley and Highgate. We're going to focus on one part for now because we haven't got time to do all 5 of them. We want to get a general feel from you about, is this the right approach? Are these the right kinds of actions? And if we're missing stuff, what are we missing? Have we got it completely wrong? And if we have, please tell us. You know, we've got big shoulders and we can take that, and we've got time to revisit and refine because we've got to get this right. For too long, our parks, open spaces haven't been given the attention that they need. So if we're going to get a 25-year plan, let's get it right now. And if that takes longer and we need to slow down, then we will slow down. So that's my little, I think, kind of just introduction to say, please be as honest as you feel you can be. If you don't feel you can be in this group environment, grab myself, Debbie or Nick afterwards. We'll arrange a conversation and we'll go through it. But I hope, yeah, this is a safe space. Think of us as a group of friends, I would say, having a conversation, and you know, yeah, and please just try and be as honest as you can. So I'm going to stop talking for a bit, she says. Will be a bit of a challenge. Afsal's smiling already. So, and I'm going to pass over to Debbie to take you through kind of where we've come from, where we've kind of got to leave plenty of time for discussion, and we will absolutely finish by 12:30. So Debbie, if I pass over to you.
Yeah, I'm going to do the moment of trying to get the right thing up on the screen, which is always an achievement if you get that bit done, I feel. So, okay.
Yep, and we can see that.
Okay, brilliant. So thinking about action planning, and I think at this stage, you know, we Hamira sort of hinted at the fact that perhaps we need to slow down a bit. We are being driven by the project part of it, and part of what I wanted to look at during the presentation was defining the different parts of what we're doing, because a lot of the feedback that we've had, and I feel responsible when we get feedback, because obviously my role mostly, although I've played many parts over the years, my role in this project is communicating the information out and trying to feed what comes back into it and keeping everybody in the project connected. So if I don't get the message right, I feel really responsible if something doesn't hit home. So I'm going to go through where we are again. It keeps changing shape. It is an evolving dynamic. So the FPA part is an evolving dynamic project. And part of what we intended to do was get as many people interested in what we're doing, get the messages out there. One of the strap lines that Nick had right at the beginning was making the invisible visible. If you succeed at that, what starts to happen, which is brilliant, okay, brilliant, is more and more people become interested, and the project starts to change shape as it includes more and more aspects, which is fantastic, except from a comms point of view, because it can appear quite confusing if you're adding more and more information in. But I'm going to try and quite briefly talk you through that process to a degree. So one of the things that has been happening at the same time that the project has been happening is our future city plan. And hopefully you will have seen our future city plan, a new direction. Now it's mostly focused in the city centre, or it is focused around the city centre, really, that plan. But what was recognised by a lot of people when it went out for consultation, which has all of that process has happened, is that the messages could equally apply to any part of the city. So although it starts in the city centre or around this area that you can see Central Heart and that diagram on the right hand side, it could equally, really, the goals, the aims, the vision could apply to the whole city. At the same time, so that area comprised of those wards that are listed here, okay, and in these areas. And at the same time, we were looking at environmental justice and where in the city residents had least access to quality green space and were impacted most by all sorts of social problems, economic problems, but environmental problems as well. You've already seen that map, but hopefully you can see how these two things have actually correlated. So while the emphasis was on the future city plan, at the same time we were realizing that if we had to just focus somewhere in the city because of it being a priority, those two places had actually were the same areas. So it had come together. And you can see that I've kind of tried to shade the names of the wards to the similar colours on our map, which we will quickly return to. But Bawdsley and Highgate is in the future city plan. It features quite highly, as well as Highgate Park, and it is one of our very red wards. So there was a sort of natural reasons that if there are any questions, I know Nick will be able to explain further because there's lots of things happening around that ward. It is a tough ward. It's got some interesting sites. So that's the ward for all the reasons that we decided to focus on. And as I say, you can see those two things have come together. So this is the goals from the city nature part of our future city plan. And we've had lots of conversations around what other things we could involve or people feel aren't focused on enough for the establishment of the Alliance. But for now, the establishment of the Alliance is a very particular project with funding from the Commonwealth Games legacy. So what we're starting with is a very focused approach to establishing the Alliance. So I know that the Active Wellbeing Society are very interested in food growing, and that is actually part of the future, our future city plan. We've also got reviving our waterways. So all of that is in there, but for the Alliance going forward and the delivery framework from the FPA going forward, all of these things will be included. And if you haven't actually seen our future city plan, we can send out the link for it. But for the project, two of the areas particularly are what we're focusing on for this establishment of the Alliance project in Bawdsley and Highgate. And one of those is around new and improved parks. And again, we're mostly focusing on improving the parks and bringing up to the Fair Birmingham standard. And BCC Parks and Nature Conservation Department play a big role in that, as well as the Alliance, because we know, and we're being very honest, that when you make decisions about where you don't have as much maintenance perhaps, or you just drop to core maintenance, those decisions in the past haven't always been made for the right reasons. I'll speak for the community as well as parks, but we want to change that. So that's fundamentally part of the environmental justice and Birmingham Fair Standard, is that it isn't around what level of park it is or what type of park it is. It's around the needs of the community who use that green space. That's a very different way of looking at things. So instead of looking from the inside out of the park, we're looking at the outside in. And this green guardianship as well, where it says that basically we need to do this together. We need to address the challenges of how we look after open spaces by working together across a range of organisations, and not just those responsible for parks, although you're all here, canals, rivers, wildlife, but also healthcare, education, skills, heritage, culture, children's services, obviously, as well, and it involved the community and give them ownership of the green spaces as well. So it becomes a whole, what we refer to as, sorry for anybody who's wildlife pure, an ecosystem of people and organisations working together to achieve all of this eventually, but to start off with focusing on this bit that's around the parks. So the funding is coming from the Birmingham Commonwealth Games, and it's part of Legacy. We also have sustainability, and we have individual community funding as well. But you can see that we've got words down here: regenerated city that is thriving, aspiring, healthy, and welcoming. And actually, those words, although they might appear in a slightly different way, are at the heart of the Birmingham Fair standard and what we're trying to achieve in parks. So it does all tie together. We're still on the right track. We're still all going in the same direction, which is brilliant at this point. So in the FBA project, we have been developing parts of connecting young people to green spaces, connecting them to nature in particular, understanding that there's an expression that it's moments, not minutes in nature. So it's really getting that connection. And we found actually these themes of get moving, grow together, connect with nature, learn more and shout about it, not only work for children, but if you want to have kind of entry level with the community, the least that you could achieve, or the best place to start, I suppose is a better way to say it. These things actually still come in and work really well. So get moving with exercise and the things like the Active Wellbeing Society deliver, growing together, planting trees, creating wildflower meadows, connecting with nature through activities, and even self-guided like nature trails that we've used that have worked really well. Learn more about it through having information available, sharing information, social media, but also training in like activities on site sense, as well as a more formal sense, and shouting about it through things like Earth stories, sharing stories, social media, promoting each other's work. So actually those actions or goals work well right across the board. And we've got two web pages here, the Little Green Champions one, which has been delivered with the early years, part of Birmingham City Council, and Green Skills and Training that is being developed in Birmingham City Council. So these two will be ongoing in the council through the departments that are engaged in the project. This is one of the Earth stories, and I think I picked this one just to highlight because it says, not every child is so lucky, and some children will barely go into a green space at all. And really, again, that brings us back to what's at the heart of that environmental justice, in that we realised through conversations early on with the community that it wasn't enough to have a green space, and you couldn't just tick the box if the green space was there. The green space had to be fit for purpose, it had to be safe, it had to be welcoming to everyone. It had to provide a range of different facilities and activities. Also, we had conversations really on around biodiversity, and we know that biodiversity isn't something that everybody still understands, including that phrase. Wildlife is better sometimes, but still people feel it's a bit of a specialist thing. And yet when you ask young people especially why they like one park and not another, they will list things like trees, flowers. They'll say it's got a lake or it's got a stream. They'll say birds, butterflies, and they actually do list the things that we would class as wildlife, biodiversity, or nature. And we've had some wonderful Earth stories where young people have told us that during COVID-19, they didn't go to green spaces very much, but it was the one place they could go. And they realised in some places, especially there's one story about Sutton Park, how fantastic the resource was. But equally, there are quite depressing stories about going to a green space but finding it full of litter and graffiti and fearing antisocial behaviour. So we're trying to tackle all of that from everything that everybody's told us. So you can see whether it's right at the top with our future city plan, whether it's the Commonwealth Games, whether it's community conversations or Earth Stories, the same environmental justice, the same messages are coming out again and again. And that has given us a confidence that there are some easy actions, we feel, maybe not easy to do, but easy to define actions that perhaps we could take forward that would make a difference to people straight away. It's only the beginning, lots of work to be done afterwards. But remembering we still have to carry on doing everything else that we do, we needed something that would give people a chance to engage with their green spaces as soon as possible. So again, this is the map that we've all got used to seeing, and you can see that although there's a lot of work to do right across the city, and we're not talking about that yet because we've got 25 years, the plan is 25 years, we're starting here in this heart where it's very, very red, and there's the Bordesley and Highgate ward. As I say, if you look at this list, I don't know if you've ever, I mean, you know, a lot of us don't have time to look at detail, but you can see that even over here, it's still quite orange, and, you know, not much of the city is very, very green. So there is, in fact, quite a big job to do, but we're starting off right there in the middle. So these are the sites that hopefully we're getting used to seeing: Garrison Lane, Kingston Hill, Denby Street, Highgate Park and New Hope Community Park. And this is what they look like, aerial view. 3 fairly large sites for the area that they're in, I suppose. Kingston Hill, quite diverse really. Highgate, lots of history. Garrison Lane, it's in a very, well, it's in a semi-industrial area, very busy roads, and a lot of, you can see on these 2 sides, you've got industrial blocks and residential on one side, and there is a playground in all of these sites. Denby is smallest, New Hope is relatively new, but it's still quite small. So hopefully we'll all get to know these sites a lot better. And this is the process that we've been using. And again, hopefully you've had a chance to already look at this. So Rupi goes out and audits the site from Landscape Practice Group and finds out what's there. All these things are changing, okay? So they're evolving and being adapted, but the theory behind it stays the same. So although one day when we get the form and we're going out doing this together, or you know, all of us are having a go at doing it, it might end up a little bit different, but the theory and the way of working through it with these getting to these actions will remain very similar. So we decided to focus on Kingston Hill Park out of all of those for various reasons. We've got a lot of connections around it already. It's quite diverse. It's got a lot of potential. It's interesting. It's got a play area. It's got a very unusual feature in the middle of Standing Stone. You know, so we think about what's the potential. We could have gone for one of the hardest ones. I think Garrison Lane is probably a difficult one because of its setting. Highgate has already had a lot of attention and will still be having a lot of attention as quite a important park strategically, but Kingston Hill I think is kind of in the middle. It's got a school close to it, it's got a children's centre close to it, it's close to St Andrews, which some people might like and others not, but they are interested in helping fund it. So Kingston Hill, we've looked at that and we've got some actions that have come out on the action plan. First one, install a welcome sign. Need a new play area. So some of these, when we actually get to the action planning part of it with milestones, you can see it's got 2 asterisks by the side of it. We're not intending to put a new play area in immediately, but there might be some work that a volunteer group could actually do to spruce it up a bit, make it a bit more interesting? Could we put a nature trail around it really quickly, an easy one? So it's an area to focus on, but not all of these actions are going to be done straight away. And by no means are all of these actions expected to be delivered by the Alliance. So again, we've got repair works to entrances, paint and fix, woodland ground floor. So there are areas of trees. Could we improve the ground flora in there? Is that something that we would be interested in doing as an alliance? Increase maintenance regime across the site. Again, parks, the first thing, and again, we'll be really honest, is that one of the first things that we do is ensure that actually what is on the programme of work that Parks refers to as the bill of quantity. So what work is actually done on the site? Is it being done? Is there a problem why it's not being done? Is there a misunderstanding? Is there a problem with the team? And let's get it up to core standard as far as the work that's already on programme. So that's the first thing that we do, make sure that's done. Then are there any tweaks we can do to it from the parks grounds maintenance team? Is there something that could be done less and something that could be done more? Is there something that if it was done less, a volunteer group could do more of it, allowing the grounds maintenance team to do more of the work that they can't do because maybe it's mowing or something that requires larger tools, mechanical tools? Every site we would like to develop a management plan. It's very different from site to site. The smaller sites should still have a management plan, but bigger sites like Kingston Hill, Garrison Lane and Highgate would obviously need a more involved management plan. Create a space for events. So Kingston Hill's quite good for that, but not all areas have got a mown area suitable, a flat area. So if we were going to do yoga or Tai Chi or Zumba or any of the or any activities, theatre, any of those things, is there a space where people can gather? Is it flat? Is it suitable? Create other landscape features, biodiversity, environmental value, having perennial wildflowers, long grass areas. Can we change the maintenance to accommodate that? It has been done as a cost saving exercise, which has brought benefits, but could we actually make that a feature of the park that carries on? Could we introduce more flowering shrubs? We've got areas of the park that are sort of woody as well, but we've also got the entrances it's interesting because on these parks, when we went to look at them, the entrances, which is the place that needs to feel welcoming, often is left a little bit. Sometimes the grass isn't trimmed right up to the edge. There isn't something attractive when you go in. Litter picking doesn't always get up to the edge. And yet, as I say, when you walk up to the park to look like, is this a place I want to walk into? That's actually the first bit that you can see. So thinking around that as well. Can we connect to water or pond features? Now, that can be any sort of connection at all. If we put a notice board in so that we can communicate with the community, for instance, we're talking about the canal networks. Could it be as simple as putting some information onto that notice board to say, do you know that the canal is really close to here? And if you get on it, you can get to these different places and there's this wildlife. Could there be an area of planting that looks at drought tolerance and talks about water shortages? Could there be a sculpture that comes to life when it rains? Anything that just brings in that connection to the water around the city, the rivers, the canals, and the sustainability aspect of water. So there we've got install a community notice board, one of my favourite ones. We found out at Dorbury Fields, as soon as we put the notice board up, things started to change because we could actually talk to people who were using the site, and we offer them a QR code or links to the web page so that they can communicate back with us. And we also have on-site community conversations so that we're actually physically on site and they know when we're there and they can talk to us. That might include a litter pick, because people do enjoy litter picking and it's something that they feel it's not so awkward to just come and talk. You can walk around litter picking, or it might be just a healthy walk, a meditation walk, a wildlife walk, just a way of bringing people to get together, and the community notice board helps us advertise that. Then we get into the extensive engagement and infrastructure to support local community and improve the use of the park and developing a friends group. And I think that bit, that engaged bit, is definitely one of the areas that the Alliance needs to, if possible, play quite a big role. And one of the reasons for that, again, complete honesty, is we used to have a much larger ranger service and they used to work with you all to do that. We would only be able to now have a ranger as a link officer into the city council. The ranger service has reduced in size through budget cuts, through retirement, through sickness, through going and doing something somewhere else, which I know these people are still in the pool out there, so we can still maybe access them if we all work together. But fundamentally, we're only going to be able to action this plan if we all work together, taking the parts that we're most able to do. So that's the concept of the action plan. You've seen this before, and again, this is a simplification of moving from basic. When we arrive at the park, it may not score very well. It may score really highly, even in a red ward. So until the whole point of the audit is we don't know until we go and have a proper look at it. Is it at basic? Is it already meeting the Birmingham Fair standard? Or is it actually a really good park with lots of community involvement already? How can we support that? So this is the bit when we go over to you. There is something that I just wanted, one of the things, as I say, that was sort of coming back, if we go back to that original, the goals, is that this is kind of a very simple version of how I see everybody working together. So we have nature in the middle, we have parks and nature conservation sort of managing the day-to-day of it. Then we have groups, departments and organisations who make up the Alliance. We have green champions around the outside, individuals that aren't necessarily connected to a group, a teacher who's very keen, a police officer who attends the meeting. I do go around deeming people green champions whether they like it or not, because to me it just means an individual who is advocating for parks, or who is volunteering or helping, or in their job they're pushing the message. So that's a different range of people. And you can see around the outside, the Alliance is fitted into a whole network of the community, of everybody else that may come in and out. Volunteers may volunteer just for a day, just for a few hours. They might stay, they might form a friends group, but they might not. They might contribute time, they might contribute money, they might contribute stories and just share information. But from this sort of Alliance model, every now and again, part of the Alliance, not necessarily all of it, may work on a project, which wouldn't include all the themes, which may not include all the departments, and may not include all the green champions, because it will be focused. And that's kind of where we are now. We've got a focused project for the Commonwealth Games funding, where we're looking at particular aspect of the Alliance and the development framework. And eventually I hope to get this kind of funky model where all sorts of different projects are going on with different Alliance members working on different projects. Sometimes it could be that a relationship's in the park that's nothing to do particularly with nature, It might be that it's dance and photography or something like that, and people get involved in that. But it's that whole, as I say, ecosystem of people, organisations, themes and projects all working together to try and get us to achieve environmental justice. So who makes up the alliance at the moment? We have got Canal and River Trust, Whitton Lodge, Active Wellbeing Society, Sahila Hub, Ampersand has joined us, but they can't commit to being very involved at the moment, which is fine. Again, it's about that, who can work on the whatever project is happening at the time. Birmingham Tree People and Birmingham Trees for Life. I think it's kind of becoming well known that those two organisations are going to join together. Birmingham Open Spaces Forum, the Wildlife Trust, and the Birmingham Children's Trust. I always put a list of Birmingham City Council departments and manage to leave someone off the list. But obviously Parks and Nature Conservation at the top, housing, jobs and skills, planning, public health, early years, education, new climate change area. So it should kind of be, again, in the end, the 25-year plan is that the whole of BCC, as many organisations as possible and as much of the community as possible are involved in the end. But for now, this is where we are for this project. No one said it would be easy. There's a link here which we'll send you with the presentation, so you can link on it and see where this information came from. But basically, I think we tried to go too fast at the beginning, and we looked at this collective management model, which I think was too much for us. And I'm proposing that the alliance is more a collaborative management model. But as I say, we won't go into all the detail. You can look at that. But I think a collective management would have been the foundation, where everybody is actually in one organisation. But this collaborative model is much more where we're going, where we're all trying to do the same thing at the same time, but still in our individual organisations, maintaining our individual identity and all of that. But I'll leave you to read that at some other time. Okay, so establishing an alliance model for delivering environmental justice, starting here. Delivering environmental justice will take a combined effort, everyone working together. I think that's completely agreed. Birmingham Parks and Park Ranger Service, Naturally Birmingham project team, for the term of the project, which finishes in March, will provide business functions for the Alliance for the pilot project to get us started. So we are all still here, and we're happy to provide as much functionality for the Alliance as possible, but that can only happen for a limited amount of time. But to keep us going and to make it a bit easier, we're proposing that we can do that. And that kind of comes under the fair and valued aspects. Birmingham City Council City of Nature Officer, which we're hoping to get, will be there to project manage this project, which is, as I've said, the focus is on parks. So it's a parks focused project, so that City of Nature Officer will be in street scene. But the Alliance, this is when I think the Alliance really comes into their own, with everything you've said, everything you've offered, what you already do, which is the involve, the green and the healthy. So establishing green champion network of involved professionals and volunteers, practical landscape enhancement, and healthy activities or adult activities for adult engagement. And this was the, just wanted to return to the City of Nature principles, focus on how you'll work together. And we still have got to get to this memorandum of understanding for everybody to feel comfortable that they know what they've signed up to. Develop metrics that deliver Alliance progress. So it's around the establishment and the progress of the Alliance as well as the delivery of the project. We liked this bit: identify, recognise and leverage differences, strengths to create value and impact. encourage collaborative behaviour. So that goes back to that collaborative management model through planning, which is what hopefully we're going to start doing there now. And the Alliance has internal BCC stakeholders as well as external ones, and we need to ensure that that is always all brought together. Maybe not at the same time, so it might be that there are, as Hamira described, an operations group in the council and an operations group in the Alliance, but they will be connected. They won't work separately. We've just got to think about that. Not everything has been developed yet. Okay, that was the delivery role that we have talked about. That maybe that would change, maybe not. So action planning. This is the bit I sort of wanted to have a break here. Do any questions? Make sure we all know where we're sort of aiming for. And really, it's very much over to you. I'm going to sort of stop the presentation for a minute. In fact, I'll stop sharing now for a minute. I'll show you in a minute the action plan, or we call it the tracker, that we use for our project. And I'm suggesting that we use a very similar format to our project tracker to actually put the actions for this project in and track them in a very similar way. However, that's my suggestion because that's what we do in the project. I know you all deliver projects yourselves, so you will have your own ways of action planning and tracking projects and reporting back on projects. And this is one of the difficulties when we try and bring all of your different methods together. So that's when I have to rely on you to be able to talk this through and think about how we're going to bring all that together. So just for a minute, I'll stop talking. And are there any questions to anybody else in the team? Anything that doesn't feel right so far? Anything like that?
Thank you, Debbie. That was yeah, really helpful and really clear, I think. And yeah, just to reiterate what the point I made earlier to everybody on this call, we really want some honest feedback. Does anybody want to go first? Even if it's just an affirmation that, you know what, yeah, this makes sense. And as Debbie was saying, you know, I know we've talked about the business part of the Alliance as well. We've had some conversations recently with people on this call about that there is a feeling we're moving too fast, too quickly, and trying to do too much. So this is why we're very much focusing on action planning. So this is quite a moving feat at the moment. Things I say a week ago don't necessarily hold true a week later. So for instance, last time we all spoke, before this particular workshop, we were thinking about including development of a CRM as a key outcome for the Alliance. Actually, we as BCC could probably most likely manage that, for instance. We've got enough resource in terms of people, staff and time to be able to allow that to happen and take the pressure off Alliance members doing that. You know, where we need your brains really is in the action side of the action plans. So yeah, if I can get you folks to focus on the actual things that we could do in Kingston Hill, that would be great.
Hamira, just or Debbie, just a couple of clarifications more than anything else. First of all, in those parks and open spaces that were included, are there any water courses, or is it purely green space?
There aren't any actually in the parks.
Right. Okay.
Not in that ward. So.
Sure. And you mentioned the project officer role. Where are we in terms of that recruitment or appointment?
I can give an answer to that, Afsal. We got a position number on Friday from our internal HR. We've been waiting for that for a while, but it's there now. And that means the role is real. And so I'm planning on getting it onto our internal talent link, which is our HR system in BCC. It'll be a secondment. we have talked about, do we get somebody brand new? Do we get agency staff in? Do we, and we kind of need somebody who understands the council to be able to hit the ground running. So that recruitment will start today.
Sure.
If I can get it in, and I'm sure I will be able to do it today. So so it should be pretty imminent. That post should be in before the end of the year. So.
Great. And that post until when does that secondment end?
12 months.
12 months. Okay. Okay, that's helpful.
So Darren Sher, who's our AD for Street Scene, he's working on a new structure, which has been coming on for quite a while for various reasons. But the idea would be is that this kind of role would be absorbed within his new structure, so it would be somebody's job, because FPA has always been set up to help Darren plan his new team. So whatever the findings of FPA are, he's very keen to be able to reflect that within his new organisation, within his new team structure, sorry. And this piece of work is really, really critical in terms of if we're going to deliver our City of Nature framework. So yeah, and it depends as well, Afsal, if it's an existing team member already doing a similar kind of piece of work, we could kind of morph their role into City of Nature and then start the secondment a bit later. There's lots of different ways to kind of, especially by doing a secondment, you've got flexibility on that. So, but we'd like to get somebody working on this ASAP in at least for 12 months.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you. And by the way, just on the presentation, I can see Gavin's got his hand up. I think that's very comprehensive, Debbie. I thought that was a really good, detailed presentation. Sets out the issues really well. I suppose if there's in terms of the action planning, just from Debbie, your and kind of Hamir's point of view, if we left this session with having had a good outcome in terms of getting to the next stage, what are the kind of one or two things that are really kind of top of your kind of priority list, saying, actually, if we can get these things at least nailed down or towards being nailed down, then we're hitting the kind of milestones. What would they be from your point of view? Because I think that provides a useful frame, for us to kind of consider some of these things.
Shall I go first, Debbie? And then I'm sure maybe Nick and Debbie.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
This is where we get a bit of a test for how synced the actual team are on this, but we are pretty much. So I think the main reason why we wanted to have this conversation was to check out that action plan with this particular group of people. So the main overarching outcome for me is, can we agree that we have an action plan that works? In principle, for Kingston Hill, in principle, the approach we've taken, does that work for you guys as alliance members? We haven't yet defined the alliance. I know it's a bit difficult to be a member of something, but as potential alliance members, does that work for you? And actually, can we also agree that these are the actions that we want to deliver in Kingston Hill, and that we could add to those, take things out, reshape them. So we've got another 40 minutes to do that. So they'd be the two main things for me, Afsal, because we're still working on the open, transparent process. I'm using inverted commas, not to belittle it at all. That isn't what I mean, because it has to be an open, transparent process. We are meeting with procurement this afternoon to work out what is the best way of doing this, because this is complicated. But we want to give everybody who wants to be given the opportunity to bid for this and the money to do it as an open, transparent way as possible. I'm not sure a formal procurement in the way that BCC tenders, whether that's too opaque, it's just a bit too blunt as an instrument, and are there other ways to look at it as well? So, and the reason I say that is the outcome of this conversation is going to absolutely go into that open, transparent process in terms of what we actually want people to deliver for the money. So, if that makes sense, Afsal. I know Gavin's being really patient. If I can just bring in Debbie and Nick, is there anything else that you guys would want from this? And then we'll move on to Gavin for his comments.
For myself, because at the moment, until we get the role, the team is helping project manage this. So what I really need is, what would be really good, is I'll show you. Let me just quickly, if I can screen share. this is so this is what we use. This is the type of format that we use with milestones and actions and key tasks and evaluation measures and owners and all of this. I would really like us, as we move forward, not now, not today, because today's about discussion, is to be able to complete this and to know what we're doing, where we are, who's doing what in each site, how we're going to do it. That's where I'd like to get to, because once we've got the project manager in place, it would be much easier for them if we had already organised ourselves, and we would have a shared document. We'd need to think how we share things. That's one of the type of things that we need to think about, but we would have this shared document where we all know who's doing what, by when, why, and how we're going to measure it. So that's what I would say.
Nick, is there anything from you you'd want to add in at this point?
No, unfortunately, I've lost the last 20 minutes because we had a breakout down here with internet and electricity, so we're back in now. So I'll come back to that at a later point. Sorry.
Thanks, Nick. So Gavin, thank you for being so patient.
That's okay. Yeah, I think certainly looking at say Kingston and Garrison Lane, smack bang in between those two sites is the canal, and it's a real focus area for us as well. So through Saltley, off Bordesley Junction, etc. It's one that falls out of our kind of focus with the Commonwealth Games. However, time and time again, it's an area that's flagged up by our operational teams because of the lack of awareness, safety concerns, community engagement, etc., lack of volunteers in the area. So it's a really big one for us. So there's two things in that. One, whether or not within the kind of JD and things like that, whether or not kind of reference to working with Canal and River Trust to unlock the links between green space and the canal network. Also, if there's an opportunity, I think Garrison Lane Park's like a matter of minutes away from the canal, whether or not there's an opportunity through this to build regular activities with my team through the community engagement to really open up those spaces, because often what we struggle with is with the canal is that if we do a health walk, it's quite linear, whereas it's great to link it into local green spaces. So I think certainly with those two parks, there's a real opportunity to open up those two spaces to be considered together.
That's really helpful, Gavin, and a big part of us also, so you mentioned linking as well, and this is something that we're really keen to try and do, is get some connectivity between our green spaces as well. So yes, absolutely, that for us is if we haven't spelt it out, particularly on the action plan, Thank you both. Is anybody really concerned about what we've put in the action plan in terms of the things that we've found from our audit and some of the actions that we have? And, I think it's really important as well is that when I say the actions aren't set in stone, it's, so for instance, if we've identified that there isn't enough connection from a health and wellbeing perspective going on, and we've included things like, I don't think this is on Kingston Hill, but it could be on a different action plan, including maybe a sensory garden. We're giving examples of the kinds of things that could work. It doesn't necessarily mean that we expect there to be a sensory garden, but when we get to the bidding stage and we ask organisations, right, how can you help us to achieve a health and wellbeing connection, we would welcome a whole range of ideas, I think. So we've put ideas down to get you kind of thinking about it, but not necessarily having to mean that that's set in stone either. Assel, do you want to come back in?
Thanks, Samira. I think the principles that you've kind of set out, Debbie kind of reiterated in the presentation around collaboration and then co-design. I think they're the kind of key things. I think the actions that have been presented seem fine to me. I mean, the key in many ways is to get going, and you have the actions, and they need to be adaptive, particularly as the level of engagement increases, from stakeholders and the community. That's, I think, what we need to design them in a way that they can be adapted. One of the things, and I know it was mentioned in there, is really to focus on possibly kind of, voices that are typically not kind of heard or engaged. I mean, that seems to be one of the kind of the big areas. How do we get people enthused and involved in their areas and green spaces? So that focus there, because I think that will then feed into shaping services or identifying gaps that we haven't thought of that are really kind of important locally. One area which I didn't see, or I think could maybe be brought out more possibly, is how do we involve I get completely focused on Bawdley and Highgate. However, there is a lot of activity in other parts of our city, and I think, how do we move alongside kind of sharing and learning what is happening in those other areas which may also benefit local residents as well as stakeholders? So something around that kind of, I suppose, learning kind of action focused approach with other communities. And a couple of very practical things, and Debbie mentioned this. I think sometimes we have maintenance schedules and plans in our parks and so spaces. The reality is very different, and I speak from kind of years of just kind of monitoring stuff kind of locally. So I think having a good understanding what the maintenance schedules say and what actually happens on the ground is really important. And I think this is where often local residents play a really important part in kind of just giving their views on what they see happening rather than what's often said on paper. And sometimes that's a good way of getting people involved in in that, because people can relate to that.
And I think you're spot on, Afzal, and this would be part of the whole kind of journey of setting up the alliance as well, and kind of how you do those things that you've just mentioned, because there is a lot of good practice in Birmingham. We're massive as a city, and there's a lot of good things going on, and this is kind of why we wanted to set up the alliance, to allow some of that coordination and sharing of information to happen in a more consistent way. So yeah, and again, I would say, somebody mentioned to us in a conversation that we've done a lot of engagement on this. It's going out via FPA board, it's going out via our newsletters, and people are responding to us. And someone said, "At what point are you going to let go as an FPA team?" And I don't know if you've got the sense from Debbie's kind of saying that we've got the city nature officer, and then it's as an FPA team we'll have to let go when the programme ends. There'll be no doubt about that. So we're really keen for the alliance to kind of take ownership of this kind of stuff as well. So yeah, it's over to the alliance to kind of shape that as well and drive it forward. But everything you've just said to me is exactly in the spirit of why we want this alliance. So please, more of that as much as we can. Gareth, thank you, Afzal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested in obviously some of the potential site improvements that were floated as some wildflower meadows or doing other kind of enhancement work where, and I suppose there's a couple of models of involving the trust in that kind of activity. We may have volunteers who can just come out and support, or we have access to maybe some volunteers who are relatively local. And the other sort of way that I think that there could be a way of getting some people to support practical activity on the ground would be through our training courses. And I'm kind of interested in exploring the idea of working on spaces like Kingston Hill Park or any of the parks identified really, and seeing if we can take the mainly young people, but it can be people of any age, to kind of teach them the skills to, for example, we do tool use courses, or we do surveying courses, and try and get them, to, like, for example, help develop and plant the the wildflower meadow whilst they're getting a qualification. And, you know, we kind of do this over, we've generally done this on our own sites, our site Eco Park. We've done a number of these courses, which isn't too far away. But I'm interested, can we kind of take that out of our sort of our space and kind of, you know, do it? And obviously what that would require really is sort of very, you know, close, you know, collaboration with, you know, the council team who are kind of leading on that sort of piece of work. And we've worked in that way before on different spaces, but probably not through a training course. So anyway, I'd be quite, you know, excited to see if we can make that work on as a bit of a demonstration, perhaps on Kingston Hill.
That's great, Gareth. I think Gavin meant to say Gareth in his chat. So got too many G's in the group. Yeah, we've got a Gary, a Gareth, and a Gavin. So absolutely. And that thing that you said about taking things out to people, again, you know, we often use examples of botanical gardens. You know, I remember when I was a child at primary school in Birmingham in Handsworth, going to the gardens was this like massive event. You know, it was so far away. Well, it's not really Handsworth to Harborne, but we haven't got a car, and you have to catch the bus or whatever it was. You know, it was such an event, and we probably got to see it once a year, if that. And you know, but why is Botanical Gardens only within easy reach of those who live in Edgbaston? Why can't we have Botanical Gardens effect around the city? So we'd really like to encourage that whole idea of about rather than getting people to come to where the action is, bring the action to the people, even if it means setting up something new. We've just had a fantastic Sow and Grow skills course done by the Employment and Skills team. So we're starting to embed green sector within adult education in BCC, and that was linked with Winterbourne Gardens. But I've now made the request, we can't just keep it there, it needs to go around the city where the people are, because you can't expect people to travel from, you know, Meat Charles to Winterbourne or what have you. So that approach fits in completely with what we're trying to achieve here, Gareth. So and of course that kind of thing will be funded because there's money from the Commonwealth Games to do that. So so Brill, that's great. Thank you. Erica, thanks for your patience.
Thanks, Amira. Yeah, it's just a kind of, I suppose, a reflection really on sort of recognising the challenge that we've got in terms of kind of wanting to hold on to system change and how important that is, you know, in terms of the sort of formal kind of process and structure versus then, I suppose, getting into the innovation and sort of not losing some of that kind of valuable learning with our communities, but obviously then having to feed into something to make the change. And I think that's quite a challenge, particularly with the range of, you know, of partners. So, you know, obviously we're doing some early engagement around Kingston Hill Park. So I think it's just been able to feed that in at the right time as well to inform some of this sort of early learning and kind of how we progress that in a timely way, because obviously, you know, everything kind of needs to be done like yesterday, but just so we capture that, I suppose, properly and efficiently and use some of the learning from that before we kind of help inform some of our next steps, really.
No, absolutely, Erica. Completely. Yeah, maybe you can argue with that what you've just said. Yeah, and kind of just one thing that I'm hearing, kind of you folks as you're talking. If I can just share another personal story. Deb, my team know that I share a lot of personal stories. Most public health consultants don't. They tend to keep their personal and their kind of population health life quite separate. But I don't tend to. Kind of all the things that you folks are talking about. You know, we had a fantastic experience in my local park at the weekend. Massive thanks to Tours. So Erica, your team with Sam Beckett. We had a family fun day, and kind of what struck me from that was actually once our Friends of Park volunteers actually understood what was required to put on a family fun day. I mean, we were all clueless before. And when we saw it in action, it was just so simple, and we weren't actually needed really, because families were kind of self-organizing and doing things themselves. And so there's this big element, I think, as well, as kind of, you know, whenever we're thinking about the kind of actions we want people to take, well, in this alliance, is always thinking about also is how do you make it easy for the community to take part in it and potentially even take over. I'm not at all suggesting, Gareth, that a community could manage a wildflower meadow by themselves or start off, but given the right skills and the right training and the right support, actually going forward, they probably could. So, and again, this isn't about de-skilling. So, some people have heard me say things like that, and heard that, well, actually, you're just trying to get rid of our jobs, you're saying that we're not skilled, so and we're not needed, that volunteers can do it. But actually, no, it's not at all. It's about citizens being able to have the confidence to do it for themselves, and also that they will teach their kids and so forth. So that was just something, a bit of a reflection that came into my mind while people were talking about what they could actually offer. So thank you for that, Erica, as well. And Gary.
Yeah, hi there. I just want to say that the work that's going on, I think, is brilliant. I come along into this from a police perspective because I firmly believe that our parks and our open spaces are invaluable to our communities, and that's the people that I deal with on a daily basis. I think that the parks sometimes get hijacked by unsavoury types. I know we have issues with some of my parks that we're talking about here with gangs, with street drinks and the like, that tend to feel like they force some of the families and the communities out. I think having communities involved, having friends of park groups, having them take that responsibility and ownership for their own area to get involved with is a great way forward, and certainly something I'm pushing over Newtown. I don't know the Newtown Burby Park features on your list as well, towards the bottom end. And if I missed it, forgive me, but how are we spreading this word with the local community to make them aware that this is what we're looking to do and to get their views and opinions on board? We're all sat around, we all want to do this great work for the community, but how are we actually asking the community what they want us to do with their parks?
Really good shout, Gary. I'm sure Debbie will have something to say on this as well as Nick. But at the moment, we're just trying to kind of make sure that we've got the support from community organisations first to help us with this. So this is what I was saying about, one of our actions might be, let's put in a sensory garden to help with health and wellbeing connectedness. There's probably 10 things you could do to encourage health and wellbeing connections. But what we need is somebody who's going to take on that mantle and say, yep, I'm going to sort that out for these 5 parks in Borsley and Highgate. And then that community organisation would be responsible for having those conversations with residents, citizens, park users about, what they actually want to see. But equally, people don't know what they want until they know what's available. So again, going back to this family fun day, Tours had brought out these archery things, which were just fantastic, and they were a huge favourite with grandparents, parents, and children. They were all like competing with each other to see who could get the bullseye. And so many of these families came up to us and said, "We just had no idea you could do this. We had no idea you could do this in a park or a garden." And so I think there were probably 6-7 activities that Tours put on for families, and the simplicity of it. It shouldn't have worked because it was just so simple. So I think there's a bit of a balance between the two. Is kind of asking people what they want, but also showing them what's possible as well. But that absolutely, again, which is why we want an alliance, because at the heart of the alliance is the voice of local citizens. We'll be looking to because the council, we don't do it as well as other places. And other places are far more better suited to having those conversations, Gary. And even, I'd encourage the police when they're out and about in our parks to be having these conversations too, and feeding that into the alliance. So I think Erica's got her hand up. Debbie, did you want to add anything to that before I bring Erica in?
I'd just say that is kind of the first action after the audit and the very practical infrastructure really based part of the action planning. And I know I say it every time, it is very important to get the local ideas. It's vital. It's vital that you involve and engage the local community. It's also important to get their ideas, but as Samira said, actually you have to build up the connection first. And when we have these conversations on different sites, people can be as much as we think everybody wants to be involved, I'm going to be very honest. This session's all about honesty. They can also get rather annoyed that you are still asking them when isn't it obvious what people want. So we have to weigh it, we have to balance it, because if you ask them too many times a question that you've asked for years across the city, or something that is, I'm afraid, really obvious, like we had a site where the grass wasn't cut, so nobody would walk onto the site. It wasn't until we cut the grass that actually everybody got together because they couldn't get on the site. You know, there are some things that everybody is going to tell you and have been telling us for 10 years. There are also things that we need to try and encourage them to do, because it might not be their first instinct, but health-wise, it will help them. There are things around biodiversity that people might not think about, but we have a commitment and actually a legal requirement to be able to do as well. So there are some actions that fundamentally we have to do. And I would like us to get to the point where we agree and we understand there are things we have to do, legal things, commitments to government plans, commitments to council plans. And then there is the whole aspect of how do we do this at a local level? What other things need to be involved? And right from day one, it's why we put up the notice board first. So we do impose ourselves by putting up a notice board, but we don't care, because we've learnt that this works. The communication starts on that day. We can tell people we're going to be there. We can, you know, if you've got a network like Kingston Hill, you've got the school right next to it. Those that are on the call have already got involvement with that school in some way. Children's Trust, Trees for Life have planted with the school at Kingston Hill. I know TORs are working with the GPs around there. So we then activate the network that already exists, and then we try to enhance that by capturing as many other people in this project with the park as a focus. So that thing happens from day one, and it would be the first thing on our action plan, and I've actually got it. I think she says, which flick to the action plan, it won't be there. Which I, you know, we are going to build this together. So we have got audit the site, quality assessment, action planning session, community engagement. So the first thing that happens after we've got to know ourselves, got the site in good working order as far as it already should be, and activated everybody who's already doing something, the community engagement starts. But as I say, we have to be confident for this project that we have been speaking to communities, and across the board, especially through the Earth Stories, which have reached out to communities who don't use parks even. Sometimes it's allotments or community gardens. Everybody asks for the same sort of things. We are not that different. But there will then be local focus, you know, activities that are particular, a piece of artwork, a certain focus on ornamental planting, or even a choice of trees. You know, that will all still happen, but we have to kind of show our commitment first, because we do get annoyance from people that we're not doing what we all know we should be doing, to be honest.
So just to add to that, we've already action notice boards. We're just going to get them done because we have budget for them. We're just going to get it sorted. Going forward, yeah, we'll ask the Alliance to help push that forward in other sites, but let's just get on with it and do it, you know, and then we can start having the conversation. Yeah, let's ask on the notice board, what else would you like to see? And that worked in Dorbury Fields really well. And you know, that hard work that Sam and Debbie have done in Dorbury Fields is still now going on. And it all started with a notice board. So thank you, Debbie. Erica.
Thank you. Yeah, I was just really kind of on a previous point, but it does feed into what Debbie was saying around what we've kind of found, particularly actually as a result of COVID, where there's even more barriers now around health inequalities and access to services, is building that trust and developing the relationship with the community. So the example you gave at the weekend, we happened to use a kind of physical activity intervention to engage, but equally recognise that there are other people in the community that we're perhaps going to engage through our streets programme, is around reclaiming green space, or through food or through sharing. So I think there's a whole host of things that you do to engage the community, develop the trust, and then you can work with them to kind of work on that green space. So it's a bit of a process that we go through. It's kind of just a tried and tested, but it's a kind of variety of ways that we use to engage.
Well, thank you. And actually, you know what, once something's up and running, you actually have people to talk. Once people are actually in your parks and using them, that is an opportunity to actually ask people what more they would like to see. So we use that opportunity at the weekend as a Friends of Park group to advertise a Friends of Park group as well. We all had our high-vis jackets on. I won't model them for you just now. So I do have a habit of getting it out now and again. And we managed to get another 3 or 4 sign-ups for volunteers to help shape what we do in the park. And we even had a 13-year-old come up to us and say, I'd like to do some of this. Can I join your group? And will you help me do it? And I was like, yes, we will. So and I completely, I can't emphasize enough. We've done so much talking just generally in our lives about this kind of stuff. And I completely hear the points about needing to know that the community want it as well. But based on what we know has worked in other areas, and it's been a diverse areas, that from Whitton Lakes to Dorbury Fields to Ward End, and all the earth stories that we've got, we kind of know the things that people want to see, and then let's try them and use it as an opportunity to ask more of what they would like to see as well. So yes, we will absolutely be doing some engagement, but we will also be starting with some action that we absolutely think, based on evidence, is going to make a difference. So yeah. Are there any more points anybody wants to raise? And then we'll do a quick summary and perhaps give you some time for a nip around the block, connecting with some nature, or having a comfort break. Okay, I think, well, firstly, a massive thank you to you all for turning up and engaging with this. It has been so helpful, and it's honesty that's going to make this alliance work. It really is, and I think we're on that journey now. So again, a thank you for being brave and being honest as well about how you really feel about this. We've had lots of conversations, be it in group meetings, be it in one-to-ones, be it through emails. We've collated them all, and all that has shaped this conversation today, really. So what I'm hearing is pretty much that people are happy with the approach. They want to make sure that there is some engagement with local residents, which we will absolutely do as well. But there absolutely is a desire to get on with things as well. So all this, having said that, needs to be resourced as well. So we do have an MOU meeting later this week as well, just to kind of finalise the memorandum of understanding. So when we get to the open, transparent process, that MOU is agreed and it's finalised and everybody's happy with it. Where we're kind of moving to now, we are really considering how much we asked the Alliance to do in the very first stages. Previously we were asking you to sort out green champions, coordination, a CRM, really solid comms. And I think perhaps for this stage, at this moment in time, it's more about getting the actions in Wolsey and Highgate sorted out. And perhaps it's a bit of a hybrid between BCC and the Alliance, doing some of that stuff, for then us to be able to then pass it over to the Alliance later in due course. I think sometimes there is always, that issue of you're trying to do too much and you're doing nothing good at all. And doing nothing well at all. So I think where the Alliance strengths are absolutely are in action and delivery and making a difference to local people. So let's focus on that for now. So we'll have the MOU meeting next week. We're meeting with procurement later today to work out the best approach of actually how we get this out to you folks, but there will be packages almost. We want someone to take a lead on community engagement, to be able to work with schools or what have you. We want someone to be able to take a lead on the health and wellbeing connectivity. We want organisations to take another community organisation to take a lead perhaps on developing green champions or what have you. So we will package that all up, and I really encourage you to have a discussion amongst yourselves as well about kind of, so that rather than kind of competing for things necessarily, you're kind of collaborating and where your strengths and things are. So but more on that to follow once we've spoken with our procurement team at BCC about next steps. Okay folks, well we do have like I said, the operations meeting, and I will let the group know. It might be too short notice for you, but I think given how well this conversation has gone, it would be really useful, I think, for some Alliance members to be part of that conversation and Friday that Andy's chairing. So after this meeting, I will send you a link to the meeting and the time and date and so forth. And if you feel you're in a position to be able to contribute to that and hear the conversation at least, I really welcome some feedback on how you feel that the BCC side of things are going. So I will action that today as well and send that over to you. But just so you know, and you might know when the date is top of his head, that I will check my calendar. It's at 11 to 1 on the 17th. The Alliance is much more, I think, aware of our plans than BCC at the moment is, and we've done that on purpose. We've purposefully engaged more with the Alliance members first, because I think of where we see kind of the importance of your work. And in all honesty, I think it will be the Alliance that makes some of the biggest differences to the City of Nature delivery framework. And not that it's a competition with the council at all, it's not. But, I think the way in which you guys work and the flexibility that you work within and the focus on action that you have is really what we need for the City of Nature. So yeah. Okay, folks, well, we've got 6 minutes to spare. So can I just say another massive thank you and to Debbie, who has done a sterling job of pulling this all together. So thank you, Debbie, for getting that all sorted for us today. And of course to Nick for all his work on the audit and constant kind of advice and insight and expertise it gives us as well. So we'll see hopefully some of you on Wednesday for our MOU meeting. But otherwise, any questions, comments, thoughts, feedback, please get in touch with myself, Nick or Debbie, and we'll endeavour to get back to you as soon as we can. Okay, enjoy your Monday, folks, and thanks again. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Bye.